You've probably heard your DNA called the Book of Life, right? Well, what if I told you that story isn't totally set in stone? Today, we're going to look at two super interesting ways that story can change. One way is like actually editing the book itself, while the other is more about changing how you read it. All right, to really get this, let's start with a classic puzzle. You've got identical twins. They have the exact same DNA, right? The same genetic code, down to the letter. So, how is it possible that one twin can get sick while the other one stays totally healthy? Why do they so often turn out to be such different people?
So take a look at Jennifer and Karen. They're identical twins, and they were born with the exact same genes. Genes that, make them more likely to absorb fat. But here's the twist. Jennifer, she sticks to a healthy diet, and those obesity genes, they never get triggered. Karen, on the other hand, well, her diet is higher in fat, and that flips the switch. It activates those very same genes, and she develops obesity. Same DNA, totally different results. So what in the world is going on here?
Okay, the first piece of this puzzle is a field that is just so cool. It's called epigenetics. And the name itself actually gives you a pretty big clue. Epi is Greek for above or on top of. So what we're really talking about is this whole other layer of control that sits right on top of our genes. Now, this is the really important part to get. Epigenetics doesn't change the letters in your DNA. You know, the A's, T's, C's, and G's? That code stays the same. What it does change is which of your genes get turned on and which ones get turned off. It's all about controlling how your body reads the instructions it already has. I love this analogy. It's like someone went into your book of life and started adding sticky notes and highlighting passages. Okay, just pause and think about this for a second, because it's kind of mind-blowing. Every single cell in your body, whether it's a nerve cell in your brain or a bone cell in your leg, has the exact same complete set of DNA. The same master blueprint. That is just one of the most incredible facts in all of biology. So that leads to a really obvious question, right? If every cell has the exact same instruction manual, how on earth does a cell know it's supposed to become, say, a skin cell and not a liver cell? Yep, you guessed it. The answer is epigenetics. So this is how it actually works. These epigenetic marks are basically tiny little chemical tags that give instructions. One way this happens is through something called DNA methylation. That's where a little chemical tag literally sticks onto a gene and tells it, hey, be quiet. Then you've got histone modification. Imagine your DNA is like thread, and histones are the spools it winds around. If those spools are wound up super tight, the genes are hidden away and can't be read. But if they loosen up, those genes are exposed and become active. It's like having millions of tiny volume knobs for your entire genome. So what's controlling these volume knobs? Well, a ton of things, actually. It's our experiences, our environment, our choices. The food you eat, chemicals you might be exposed to, just getting older, even things like temperature. All of this stuff can leave these little epigenetic marks, constantly fine-tuning how your genes are expressed all throughout your life. Okay, so that's epigenetics. Now let's switch gears and look at the other side of the coin. If epigenetics is like adding sticky notes and highlights to the book, mutations are totally different. This is like going in with a pen and actually rewriting the words on the page. A mutation, simply put, is a change in the DNA code itself, and it's usually permanent. It's basically a typo. A letter in the code might get swapped for another one, or maybe it gets deleted, or an extra one gets inserted. And see, unlike those epigenetic marks, which can often be erased, a mutation changes the core instruction. It's a permanent edit. So where do these typos come from? Well, sometimes it's just a simple copying error when our cells divide. It happens. But a lot of the time, they're caused by outside forces we call mutagens. We're talking about things like UV light from the sun, chemicals you'd find in cigarette smoke, pollution, even some viruses. All of these can damage our DNA and lead to mutations. But here's something that's super important to understand. Not all mutations are created equal. Where that typo happens, in which type of cell, makes all the difference in the world. So over here on the left, you've got what's called a somatic mutation. This happens in a regular body cell, think a skin cell or a lung cell. It might affect the person who has it for sure, but it stops there. It's not going to be passed on to their kids. Now on the right, that's a germline mutation. This is a big deal because it happens in a reproductive cell, like an egg or sperm. And this is the kind of mutation that can be inherited by the next generation. That's the key difference. All right, we've talked about epigenetics, we've talked about mutations.
Let's pull it all together now and talk about what this really means for us, for you. So here's a quick side-by-side to lock it in. Epigenetics, that changes how your genes are expressed. Mutations, they change the actual DNA sequence. Epigenetic changes, often reversible. Mutations, pretty much permanent. And can they be passed down? Well, epigenetics, sometimes, but mutations, only if they're in those germline cells. It really comes down to this. One is like writing notes in the margins, and the other is rewriting the book itself. And get this. When you look at the DNA of any two people on the planet, it's something like 99.9% identical. That tiny little 0.1% difference accounts for a lot of what makes us who we are genetically. But a huge part of what makes us truly unique individuals, that's our epigenome. It's totally unique, shaped by the one-of-a-kind life that each of us lives. And honestly, that brings us to what I think is the most powerful idea in all of this. Your DNA, it's not some rigid, unchangeable blueprint that dictates your destiny. It's much more like a dynamic script. And the choices you make every single day, the food you eat, how you live your life, they can actually influence which parts of that script get read and how loudly. So yeah, the genes you're born with, that's just chapter 1. The rest of your story is this incredible, ongoing conversation between those genes and your life. It really leaves you with a question, doesn't it? Your DNA isn't your destiny. So what story will you tell with it?